Hello BookTube, hello friends, welcome to Lizzie Pay Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and in this video I'd like to show you what I read in the month of November. So I've had another banner month. I didn't read up into the 60s or 70s, but I did finish a total of 46 books for the month of November. And of course, as usual, most of those are audio. 39 of them were on audio, 7 were in print. I think 7 is a pretty big number for me for print books because you guys know that's not my strong suit. I love to listen to audiobooks, but it takes me a while to get through some print books. And that's the majority of what I need to read for December in order to finish up some of my reading goals and challenges. So it's going to be tough, but I'm going to really be working hard to read as many print books as I can for the month of December. But for the month, I did have a lot of good accomplishments where I finished up some different readathons and things like that. I will probably do a separate video where I talk about what what book met each challenge for all the different fall readathons that I participated in. I realized when I was going over it today that I'm still lacking 1 or 2 books in maybe like 3 different readathons. So I want to finish those up, and then I'll just do a whole readathon wrap up. I don't think I'm going to participate in any readathons in December, simply because this is the last month of my 20 by 20 challenge, which is a reading challenge I gave to myself at the beginning of 2018. I've been working on it for 3 years. I've done really great, and I've gotten a lot of stuff read that had been on my TBR. And I just still have several things to read, and most of those are not audio that I have left. So in order for me not to get sidetracked and let myself get into reading things that are not already on my TBR, I'm going to try to stick with my goals of finishing up the things that I want to read. And as a result, I'm not going to read very many Christmas books either. I've actually read 3 Christmas books this month. Well, kind of 4, really. But I've got a few on my TBR that I'll get to if I can. But for the most part, I just want to finish some of my other reading goals. So anyway, I don't have a lot of memory left on my phone right now. And so I already did videos on the 10th. And then on the 21st, where I talked about the books that I read from the 10th, from the 11th through the 20th. So I will do my best to tell you a little bit more about the books that I read the last 10 days of the month, but I've kind of got them arranged by category. So if I forget to mention what I thought about anything in particular that you want to hear about, then just write me a comment and we can chat about, books later. Or some of these I plan to do other, reviews, things like that. I'll hopefully talk about some of my favorites later on in other videos. So for now, let's just do the stats. I think I already mentioned 39 audio, 7 print. Now, I finished a total of 46 books, but on Goodreads, it's showing up as 42. That's because I had some bind-ups that technically they're, a couple of books had 2 stories, and so on Goodreads I just counted those as 1 book each, and another bind-up that had 3 stories. But in reality, I read all those books. So depending on how you want to look at it, you could say I read 42, or you could say I read 46, and both are accurate. So of the different genres, 17 romances. I'm still knocking out some romances, and 8 general fiction, or mostly women's fiction, really. One of those is middle grade, so I'm kind of trying to go by genre first, and then I'll do some overlapping categories. There were 6 that were mystery, not necessarily cozy, just mystery, suspense, whatever. And then 7 that were either post-apocalyptic or fantasy. I just kind of grouped those together. And then 8 that were nonfiction. And then Christian fiction, I have overlapped. Some of these were romance, some are women's fiction. But if they're Christian-based, I read 12. And so there's some overlap, like I said. Middle grade books, 9, and one of those was nonfiction, but I also counted that in the nonfiction total. So, if you're adding these numbers up, then it's going to come out to be more, because some things are in more than one category. And then Christmas books, 3, maybe 4. One of them Has some Christmassy stuff on the cover, but it wasn't really, it was more set in the fall. They did do some preparations for Christmas in this particular book, but I wouldn't consider it a Christmas book. So that is just kind of a summary. And then I read a total of 26 different authors. The author that I read the most by this month was Debbie Macomber. I read 7 books by her. And the next one down on the list is Teresa Ives Lilly. I listened to 4 of her books on audio on Audible Escape. 3 by Emily Brightwell, 3 by Melissa De La Cruz, and 2 by all of the next few names: Kenneth Blanchard, Lisa Patton, Susan Beth Pfeffer, Brooke St. James, Philip Gully, and Ann B. Ross. So, and then all the others, just read 1 book by. So, I usually don't talk about authors, but I realized that I was doubling up quite a bit and reading more than 1 book by several authors. So, you know, I just thought that was interesting because I am planning to do a reading project for next year where I do some author binges, and maybe 1 a month. I will pick an author that I either have a lot of books on my shelf by, or just a lot of books on my TBR, and I want to maybe just pick at least 1 author per month to really binge on and get a lot of their backlist read. So that's something I'll be talking about later. Then, okay, so let's just go through by category. I'm not going to go into detail. For nonfiction, Educated by Tara Westover. This was our book club book. And then I figured, why not go ahead and read Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. I did not like this one very much. I did really enjoy Educated. For nonfiction November, Educated was the book for Buzz. One of the books I said I was going to read from Movement was Fantastic Water Workouts. I did not get that one done. So this one that I said I was going to read for Time, 1 Minute Manager Gets Fit, I moved it into the Movement category. And then before that, I picked up the new 1 Minute Manager, and I counted this for Time. And then for Discovery, just because literally the root word discover is in the subtitle, If the Church Were Christian by Philip Gully, Rediscovering the Values of Jesus. Now, I did not, okay, this was interesting. It's always interesting to see how other people believe about different things. But I can just tell you that my personal Christian views and beliefs do not line up with Philip Gully's. So, for me personally, I don't really recommend this book, but it is interesting to read about how other people believe. I mean, you know, there's how many people in the world? There's that many belief systems. You know, I mean, it's like we all have something different that we believe. But I was a little disappointed because it didn't line up more with how I believe than it did. But he's a Quaker minister. I don't know what I was expecting. You know, of course, his belief system is going to be different than mine as a Southern Baptist Christian. So, you know, anyway, it was interesting, but definitely he and I don't see eye to eye, in theology. Okay, then I had 3 that I read from my TBR jar. I was excited to get 3 of those done. Don't Sweat the Small Stuff in Love by Richard Carlson and Christine Carlson. It's a Girl Thing, How to Stay Healthy, Safe, and in Charge by Mavis Jukes with a J. And Have a New Kid by Friday by Dr. Kevin Leman. This had some really good sound advice in it. I really enjoyed, I enjoyed all of these, much more than I thought I would. Okay, so romances. Debbie Macomber definitely was the predominant figure in my romance reading this month. Well, I listened to 6 at the beginning of the month that I had downloaded from Audible Escape. So 4 by Teresa Ives Lilly, 2 by Brooke St. James. I talked about those in my video on the 10th of the month, and so feel free to go back and check that out if you haven't already. So by Debbie Macomber, I listened to both of these books. Orchard Valley Grooms is the first book, which is actually 2 books. Stephanie and Valerie and Stephanie. Those are the names that were originally published, I think, as Harlequin or Silhouette books under those names. So this actually contains 2 books. And then Orchard Valley Brides contains Nora and Lone Star Lovin'. So this is a total of 4 books. On Goodreads, I just put the bind-ups because that's what I have. I listen to them as as just two books. So on Scribd, this was a bind up together, and this was a bind up together. So it was just two different borrows from Scribd. So I'm just counting them as two, but they were originally published as four separate books and not two. So depends on how you want to look at it. And then also, I finished up the second books in, well, I finished up the other book in each of these bind-ups because I had read one book from each of these books in the month of October, so I thought I'd just go ahead and finish them. This is a book from my shelf. This is Country Bride by Debbie Macomber, so that is what I listened to from Hoopla this month. But the other book in this bind-up is called Wood Rose Mountain by Rand Thane. It's actually book 2 in the Hope's Crossing series, and it can be read as a standalone, but I read several of them in their original order in October. And so because I had this on my shelf and I'd already read Wood Rose Mountain, I decided I'd go ahead and listen to Country Bride. And then now that I have read both of these, I can, pass this on to someone else. And then this is a library book, but one of the Debbie Macomber books that I listened to in October was called White Lace and Promises. And the only place I could find it at the library was in this bind-up called Marriage Between Friends. So I thought, why not just go ahead and listen to the second book in this bind-up called Friends and Then Some, and then I will have gotten both of these done. So I did, and now I can return that to the library, and I've got 2 Debbie Macomber books that I can check off my list. Then the other Debbie Macomber book that I listened to, I've already talked about, Jingle All the Way. This is her newest Christmas book, which is not all that Christmassy. I know several people have said that. They're right, it's not. But still a fun book. I enjoyed it. Then the other 2 romances that I listened to are books 2 and 3 in the English Garden series by Lori Wick. I always forget the order of these. Book 2 is The Rescue. And book 3 is The Visitor. So I've just got one left. I am planning to listen to that in the month of December, so I can check this series off my list. These are set in early 1800s in the English countryside, and they are faith-based and very enjoyable. Okay, so then I had some other books that I wouldn't necessarily consider a romance. A couple of them are lightly faith-based, but not particularly. Well, this one I wouldn't consider. This is the other Philip Gulley book that I read. It does have to do with a church, a Quaker church, but I don't really consider these to be Christian books. They're not really evangelical. They are just funny. So, they're just fun. A Change of Heart is the next to last. Well, no, I take that back. It's my next to last book in the series, but I've already read the next book, which is 4.5. It's a Christmas book. I went ahead and read it last year. So now I have one left to read called Almost Friends, and I would love to get it read by the end of the year as well and finish up that series. And, I did have 2 other romances that I forgot to mention, and they are from the Military Canine Unit series. Now, I think I added these into the mystery category as well because these are love-inspired suspense. This is the Military Canine Unit series. Rescue Operation by Lenore Worth is maybe book 5, I think. I don't have a copy of book 6. It is called Explosive Force by Lynette Eason. This is a series that each one is by a different author, and my library didn't have a copy of the next one, but it is on Hoopla on audio, so I was able to listen to it and enjoyed them. In fact, I liked Explosive Force a little better than this one. This one didn't have a real good mystery that was wrapped up within this book. All the others have had the overarching mystery that takes place, that's continuing on throughout the book, and then another mystery that's wrapped up within the book. This one introduced some other things, but I don't think that anything was really finished in this book, so that was kind of disappointing. But still, it carried the story through, so that was fine. Okay, so this one, you could consider this a romance, but it is more of a renewal, sort of. It's about a married couple, and they're having some issues and some things that they go through. This is, no, that was the first book. I scratched that. This is about a widow who, goodness, I listened to this early in the month, and now I'm trying to think. She goes back to her aunt's home or grandmother's home, mother's home. I don't know. She goes, oh my lands. Why can I not remember? She goes back to Canary Island, which I think is Spain, and she reconnects with someone that she had met as a teenager. That's the story here. And that person is actually one of the parents in the Christie series. I think he's not Christie's father, but Christie marries Todd, and he's Todd's father. So it's linked a little bit to the Christie Miller series. But anyway, you don't have to read that to read this, because I haven't, and it was fine. And you don't have to read the first book, which is Under a Maui Moon. That book and this book are not related at all. This is called the Hideaway series. I think there's 3 books total, and so far, what I can gather is that this series is about women who are just going through a period of sort of starting over. And so this is about a widow who is starting over. The first book that I was getting confused with is about a married couple, and they are having some problems, and it's kind of their starting over. Whatever. Okay. Anyway, getting back to the other fiction books or women's fiction. One of the other Christmas books I listen to is The Christmas Table by Donna Van Leer. This is part of the Christmas Hope series, but you don't have to read the Christmas Hope series to read this one. You could just pick this one up. I loved this. It was so, so good. I also did get to 2 of the Miss Julia series. Etta Mae's Worst Bad Luck Day is the only book in the series so far that is from a different perspective, not from Miss Julia's perspective, which is kind of fun because it's fun to see Miss Julia from someone else's view, and I enjoyed it a lot. Then I also listened to Miss Julia Lays Down the Law. Now, the audiobook that I listened to on Hoopla has a lot of Christmassy things on the cover, and this has a few, but it's really a book set in the fall. They are doing some preparations toward Christmas, but I would not consider this a Christmas book. And I think when I talked about this in my earlier video, like on the 10th or on the 20th, I said that I thought this was a Christmas book, and then I listened to it and I realized it's not really what I would consider a Christmas book, even though it does take place in the fall, like mid-November. It's it's only a teeny bit Christmassy. Then I listened to 2 books that I've had on my TBR for a little while. I found these on Audible Plus. I picked up the 3rd book in this trilogy at a library book sale because I just thought it looked interesting. It's called Southern as a Second Language. It's by Lisa Patton. And so I got it home, I looked at it, and I thought, oh, it's the 3rd one in a trilogy, so I'm going to have to find the other 2. Well, I have still to this day not ever seen the other 2 in any kind of a book sale situation, but I added them to my Audible wish list, even though they were not on Audible Escape. I just put them on my wish list so that I would just, not forget about them. So they were there, and as I was going through my wish list for Audible Escape, I saw that the first 2 in the series, or the trilogy, were on Audible Plus, and I was so excited because I have a 3-month trial subscription to Audible Plus. So the series is by Lisa Patton. I did not know what to expect at all, and I can tell you, she is now one of my new favorite authors, because these were just wonderful women's fiction, a tiny bit of romance, but not what I would consider romance, just a tiny bit. I'm looking to see which is the first one. The first one is Whistlin' Dixie in a Nor'easter, and this is about a woman from the South, I think Memphis, Tennessee. Is it Memphis? Yeah. Her husband talks her into going to Vermont and buying an inn. She doesn't want to, but she goes, and that's where it starts. It's fantastic. And then this is book 2, where she has gone back to Memphis. This is Yankee Doodle Dixie. And then, like I said, the 3rd one is called Southern as a Second Language. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the 3rd one. I can't even remember. I haven't read it yet. Unfortunately, it's not on Audible Plus, or I would have already listened to it. But anyway, I own the book of the 3rd one. These are library copies. And aren't those beautiful covers? Look at the peaches on the front. Anyway, I love this. This is a perfect example of clean romance that is not faith-based. Like I said, there's a tiny bit of romance. The first one, not so much, but the second one, a little bit more. And they are completely clean and strong female characters, hilarious female characters, just so good. Now, I looked these up on Goodreads after I'd already finished. I mean, I was rating this one 5 stars. And then I looked at it, I was disappointed to see several people had rated it lower. And I was just kind of reading through some of the reviews, you know, and they were mostly just talking about, I don't know, different things with the characterization they didn't like, and some of the just kind of critiques about the writing and stuff. I didn't care about all that. I just enjoyed the story. I loved it. Okay, I think that's everything except for mystery and middle grade. So let me go through those quickly. I reread And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This was for my mystery book club at the public library, and enjoyed that again. It had been so long since I had read it, I couldn't even remember who the culprit was, but it's a great book. And then I also listened to the first 3 books in the Mrs. Jeffries series by Emily Brightwell. I have it in a bind-up of 3 books: The Inspector and Mrs. Jeffries, Dust for Clues, and The Ghost and Mrs. Jeffries. I thoroughly enjoyed these. I think my subscriber, Melinda from Two Boys Scrappin', said that she tried these and she didn't really like them. So, you know, they may not be for everybody. They're set in the Victorian time, but I just think they're a lot of fun, and I did really enjoy it. I'm also caught up with the J.P. Beaumont series by J.A. Jantz. This is Sins of the Father, and I have thoroughly enjoyed this series. And then I also read or listened to the newest Joanne Fluke book in the Hannah Swenson Baking Mystery series. It's a Christmas one. It's a somewhat of a prequel called Christmas Cupcake Murder. Now, if you're looking for a straight up murder mystery, this is probably not your book. There is a mystery, but it's not really a murder, and I can't even remember. I think there is some discussion of a murder, but I don't know. It's just a fun story about Hannah and her family and her business and all of that. So if you're a fan of the series, you'll like it. But if you just want a murder mystery, I would probably pick a different book in the series or a different series. So then I guess you could count these love inspired books, because they are romantic suspense. You could count those as mysteries, so I read 2 of those. And then I also had several middle grade books, and some of these you might consider YA, but you know, I won't argue either way. They could go either way. I had some that were fantasy. I read book 2 in the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander, called The Black Cauldron. That was fun. And then I also finished a series. It's the Descendants series by Melissa De La Cruz. These are on Hoopla now. I'm so excited. I own books 1 and 3, and I got the other 2 from the library. So this is a library book, Return to the Isle of the Lost. It's book 2. And then I own this one, Rise of the Isle of the Lost. It's book 3. And then this is a library book, Escape from the Isle of the Lost, book 4. And so that's all of the series. I had read the first one several years ago whenever it first came out, and I'd been wanting to get to it. I thought I would end up having to just read them in print, and I didn't own book 2, but then they showed up on audio on Hoopla, so that was cool. I'm glad to finish that series. And then a couple of futuristic, post-apocalyptic kind of stories. I have now read books 2 and 3 in the Last Survivor series by Susan Beth Pfeffer. Book 2 is The Dead and the Gone. And book 3 is This World We Live In. The premise of this is that an asteroid hit the moon and pushed it out of orbit, so now it's way too close to the Earth, sets off a catastrophic chain of events. And the books themselves, the characters are kind of frustrating, but it's still just very compelling. I know I've had a conversation with Rebecca Whitford. She's one of my subscribers and watchers, and she was talking about how she has read and reread this series so many times because it's just a fun series to read, even though it's frustrating. And my daughter's the same way. Katie even tells me that book 4 is not worth reading, but yet she's read it and reread the whole series. So anyway, I still will read at least the 4th book at least one time, and I'm hoping to get it read by the end of this month so that I can check this series off my list. And then another book I have made progress, or another series I've made progress in, is the Shadow Children series by Margaret Peterson Haddix. This is book 5, Among the Brave. I enjoyed this a lot. There's 2 more books in the series, and I hope to get those read by the end of the year. If you hear a crackling over here, that is Emily turning pages. She loves to make the pages crackle when she turns them. I give up on that. You know, you pick your battles. And then One other book that is contemporary but middle grade is from the Sunshine State list for this school year, Deep Water by Watt Key. This was so good. And I get so much anxiety about thinking about being in the water. This is basically a survival story about a deep sea dive gone wrong, and I would recommend it. I thought it was great. Then, let's see. Is that everything? That might be everything. Yeah. So a couple of books that I wanted to show you that I had planned to read and I didn't. You may be wondering, what about your Series of Unfortunate Events project? I thought you were reading one of those every month. I was, and I saved this next to last book, this penultimate book called The Penultimate Peril, for the last day of the month. I have it checked out from Hoopla, and I think I've checked it in now, but I had this one and the last book both checked out from Hoopla, and I thought, okay, I will listen to this one on the 30th, and I'll listen to the last book called The End on the 1st. That way, I'll just go from one to the other while they're fresh on my mind. And I just messed around. It was a busy day and on the 30th, and I didn't get started on it till later in the day. And by the time midnight rolled around, I was only half done. And I couldn't even remember the first half. It had just kind of gone past me in a fog. So I just gave up on it, and I started it over on the 1st. I listened to it completely yesterday. So I am done with it now, but it did not count for November. There is a quote in here that is so good. Usually when I'm listening on audio, quotes kind of go past me and they don't stand out. This one did, and I'm going to post it on my Instagram. So be sure you check out my Instagram and see the quote from this book. It's great. And so then another book I wanted to get to, and I didn't even get started on this one. I think I read a page or two, but I started it over. Actually, I think I really didn't even I got a little bit of it read yesterday, maybe a chapter. This is the graphic novel version of The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan, adapted by Orpheus Collar. The reason I wanted to read this is because on the Fall Into Reading Challenge, I did the whole big card of 25 prompts, and the only prompt I hadn't finished yet was graphic novel. Didn't get it done. I'm reading it now, so I can still check it off the list, but I'm so mad that I didn't get it done within that 3-month time frame. I got all the others done, but I didn't get graphic novel done. So I'm reading it right now. And then I did start a cozy mystery that I didn't get finished, that I carried over, and that is Buried in a Book by Lucy Arlington. So I'm reading that right now with Di from Di Says 19 Hearts. She did a kind of a really neat thing where she read it chapter by chapter, and she did a video of each. In each video is about 2 chapters of the book, and so it's kind of like buddy reading it with her. Although she's already done with it now, I'm reading it 2 chapters at a time, and then going back and watching each video, and then commenting. So it's fun. It's fun to do that. So anyway, and it was a book that was on my shelf that I needed to read. Anyway, so, okay, so that is everything that I read in November. Year to date now, my total on Goodreads is 394 books. That includes the one I've already finished this month. So a total of 393 by the end of November. And, it could be more if I counted all of these bind-ups and stuff as, more books. So I've probably already really technically hit 400, but it's fine because it's already kind of overinflated because of all those short audiobooks that I listened to in October. So it's fine. It'll all come out in the wash. And, barring any unforeseen circumstances, I should expect my Goodreads total to go, way over 400 if I get everything read in December that I want to. Even if I get half of everything I want to read in December, it should, well surpass 400, which is like a banner year for me. I've never read this much in my whole life. So I'm excited about that. And maybe next year I need to calm down a little bit and focus on some other things. I don't know what that looks like, but anyway. So that's all for this video. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope that you enjoyed your month of November, even if you stayed home, whether you traveled or stayed home or whatever you did. I hope that you enjoyed it. We elected to stay home this year, and we even had our Thanksgiving dinner a little bit late, but we had a good time together as a family. So anyway, that is all I have for this video. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.